Hey everyone, today we're taking it kind of easy and you don't have any practice problems to worry about. So all you have is the first page in your new packet to complete, and it says Lesson 12 Review. We're just spending a little more time with adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing rational numbers. And you can see some of those are fractions. I'm going to do a couple examples for you to get you started. But please use this time to just really practice that skill and get good at it as we move forward in our math. A couple of things to remember is when we're dealing with fractions, remember that when we add or subtract fractions, that we need to have a common denominator. And that's something that we will look at in the examples that we do. Also remember, when we divide rational numbers, sorry, that's when we're dividing fractions. We would actually be multiplying by the reciprocal. We can divide integers and rational numbers. Just remember that our rule for multiplying and dividing is the same. So when we multiply or divide, if it's the same sign, then our answer is positive. And that could be two positives or two negatives being multiplied or divided. And if it's different signs, then our answer is negative. So we'll try to look at a few examples about that. So here first, we are going to look at a couple of subtraction problems. When we subtract rational numbers, it says here in the directions, rewrite every subtraction problem as addition problems, which is a much easier way of doing this. So in this case, we have negative 4/5. It's in parentheses because it's a negative amount. They're just keeping them together. We're going to be adding, and that means we have to add the opposite of 7/8. And the opposite of 7/8 is negative 7/8. So that we would write in parentheses there also. Now, when we're adding fractions, we have to have a common denominator. That means we need a number that 5 and 8 can both become. A lot of times we can get the common denominator. It's not always the least common denominator, but we can always get the common denominator by multiplying the two denominators, 5 and 8. And 5 times 8 is 40. So we use 40 as our common denominator here. We need to make this an equivalent fraction. So our denominator just got 8 times larger, which means that our numerator has to get 8 times larger, and 4 times 8 is 32. Now it's going to remain negative. We haven't done anything to change that, but let's go ahead and convert our second fraction. This time we're not going to multiply by 8, we're going to multiply by 5, because that is how many times larger our denominator got. 8 into 40 becomes 5 times more. So our numerator needs to get 5 times greater as well. And 7 times 5 is 35. Now again, that is still going to remain negative, and we're adding these two negative quantities together. So we're just going to get more of a negative amount. Now all we do with these, not like multiplying where we multiply numerators and the denominators, here we're going to keep our denominator, which is going to be 40, and we're going to add up our numerators to get 67. Now we could turn that into a mixed number if we wanted to. If we wanted to take 40 of these 40ths out, that would be one whole amount. And if we take out one whole amount, it's still going to be negative. When we take out 40 40ths to get that one whole, what we're left with is 27 40ths, and that can't be simplified anymore. So that would be a way to answer that one. For the second one, we already have a common denominator. We just need to follow directions, which is to rewrite this using addition. So 1/3 plus, now we're we're adding the opposite of our other quantity here. Instead of subtracting it, we're going to add the opposite of it. The opposite of negative 5/3 is positive 5/3. So writing it with addition makes this much easier to look at and to solve than subtracting negative amounts up here. Well, since we already have a common denominator, we're only going to add the numerators. That means this is going to equal 6/3, which would be good to simplify. 6 divided by 3, which we have here, this is a division sign also. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So our answer is 2. Now, along the side of your sheet, there's some other expressions to solve. Some are using multiplication and division, so remember that those use different rules when we do that. And we talked about that back here, where we have same sign and different sign, so keep track of that. Go ahead and do the rest of the practice. Remember, if it's a subtraction problem, rewrite it as an addition problem. You just have to remember to add the opposite amount. All right, I'll be on Zoom to help if you have any questions. Let's take a look at one of the examples on the back of this sheet. Says if it's negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit in Rantoul and it is 75 degrees Fahrenheit in Honolulu, what is the temperature difference between the two cities? What is the temperature difference? Now, temperature difference means subtraction. Difference is what we call the answer to a subtraction problem. So we want to know the difference between these two temperatures. We want to go from negative 25 degrees to 70, going up to 75 degrees and getting our answer there. We could solve that, but I would use addition to solve it. So I would rewrite it as negative 25 plus negative 75. So we're adding the opposite. You know what? I actually wrote this backwards. Let me clear that off. If we're finding the difference, we'd want to start with 75 degrees here. And we would subtract the lower temperature here, which is negative 25. That would be a much better way to solve it, because if we solved it the other way, we would have gotten a negative answer, which we can look at and see that it's actually a positive difference, but this is just a better way to write that. So when we rewrite that with addition, 75 plus the opposite of negative 25, which is positive 25, now we can clearly see our 100-degree temperature difference. Okay, and that's a positive temperature difference. Okay? So take a look at the rest of those word problems. Make sure that your answers make sense is going to be the big thing here. And please don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're having some trouble, I would happily explain a question for you. Remember, there's no practice problems today. Just work on this first sheet, practicing the skill a little bit more before we move on to the last part of Unit 5. Everybody have a great day.